Hi, everyone. This is our presentation for our success attributed to adaptability. I am Layla Andrade.
And I'm Gracie Blanc.
For our study, this is our background literature study. We looked at other sources and articles to really just get more information on what we wanted our study to cover and what specifically, such as stereotypes, biases, gender, and ethnicity. We are specifically covering implicit discrimination. Society discrimination isn't as what it was before. Society is evolving. We're making sure things are more socially acceptable. However, we believe that not all discrimination we is people are aware. Piaget, a cognitive theorist, he believed that we learn through accommodation and assimilation, um, such as gaining new information and applying it to other information that we know, or giving it essentially its own cabinet in our brain because that information is new and has its own branches. Other theorists push it a step further and believe that we have two different forms for both accommodation and assimilation: cognitive, which is what Piaget preached, and cultural. Cultural is just as it sounds, focusing on other cultural practices, customs, beliefs, religions, holidays, things like that. Learning about it and accepting it, or bringing it into your own practice, or including your others into your own culture. However, as mentioned, um, a accommodation assimilation can be beneficial, as I said, including others into your culture, or it can be harmful, like a subconscious discrimination. We wanted to focus on if people associate certain stereotypes or biases with traits of success. Grace and I chose adaptability.
The purpose of the study is to uncover hidden biases and societal stereotypes that might affect how we see others. Specifically, we are looking at how gender and ethnicity play a role in shaping perception of adaptability. The ultimate goal is to take what we learned from these findings and use it to promote fairness and inclusion in schools and workplaces. This is important because understanding these biases is the first step towards creating equal opportunities for everyone. Layla and I crafted three different hypotheses that we wanted to run using the 2x2 factor ANOVA. The first one being adaptability is perceived to be more present in women in the workforce than men. The second one is Asian Americans are perceived to show greater traits of adaptability in the workforce than Caucasian Americans. And the third being a male Asian doctor's success attributed to adaptability will have a slight correlation to that of a woman Asian doctor.
The design for our study is an experimental study, and we used an online qualitative survey. Later on, we turned all our results into quantitative, but the questions were all qualitative. We also used a between subject study, which means that there were multiple different conditions and variables, but each participant only received one of them. I'll get more into this in a moment. And of course, the protocol and confidentiality. The protocol, we briefly covered what it is that we're studying, just to make sure we didn't accidentally influence our participants while answering the questions, and then reassuring that confidentiality is very important. The results won't be shared. We won't even know what their answers are. We just want to analyze the data. Our independent variables is the doctor's gender and a doctor's ethnicity. Again, I'll get into this in just a moment. And the dependent variable is perceived adaptability. For our procedure, essentially our step to step, if you wish to recreate our study, we use double blind sampling, 2x2 factorial, and a vignette. So a vignette is essentially a short story that we create. Our character in our vignette, the doctor, we use a gender neutral name intentionally, Alex. The only things that we changed, because we created multiple of these, the only things that changed were the pronouns, such as she, her, or he, him, and the last name, Wong or Watson. The last names were to imply either white ethnicity, Caucasian, or Asian American. So we created all of these vignettes, but to approach and make sure we accurately did double blind sampling, we had our professor randomized the vignettes for survey one was one of them, and survey two, survey three, etc. So us as the researchers didn't know which survey we were giving our participants. And then the independent variables are part of the 2 by 2 factorial. We have a visual representation for you to see later in the presentation. On the actual survey, we had two different types of questions, multiple of each. The first was recall. These were the questions where we wanted to see if our participants could accurately remember the gender and the ethnicity of their character for their survey. They would either get it correct or incorrect, and we want to see if biases were influenced into it, such as success and everything, what they believe their character was like. And then our second form of question was the perceptions of traits of success. There were multiple, anywhere can be answered from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Graces in the eyes, we chose the trait of adaptability.
Our study included 147 undergraduate students ranging in the age from 18 to 65, with the average age of about 26 and the standard deviation of 8.75. In terms of ethnicity, the majority of participants identified as Hispanic, making up 41.4%, followed by white participants at 31%. The other ethnic groups were represented in smaller percentages. For gender, most participants identified as women, which is 66.7%, while 32% identified as men, and the less than 1% identified as transgender or non-binary. When it comes to social class, most participants considered themselves middle class at 34.2% or upper class at 21.2%. This diverse group gave us a good range of perspectives to analyze for this assignment. After we ran the manipulation check for our correct or incorrect answers given to the participants, we found that 85.3% of the participants correctly identified Alex's gender, while 14.7% were incorrect. This shows that the gender manipulation was effective. However, when it came to Alex's ethnicity, only 51% of the participants identified it correctly, and a large number of 49% were incorrect. This means that the ethnicity manipulation wasn't as effective as we had hoped. Overall, the gender aspect worked out well, and the ethnicity manipulation could have been a bit more clear to the participants.
This is a snapshot of our results that from SPSS has all our information. We went through tests and put in all our data for the perceptions, or the question specifically on the survey asks what is most likely Alex's gender and ethnicity. So we use those, and then perceptions of adaptability. That's what we mostly put through all our tests. On the right, this is the 2 by 2 factorial that we mentioned earlier, and our two independent variables. On the left is the ethnicity, Asian and white, and on top is the gender, male and female. And through SPSS, we were able to access all our descriptive statistics, such as the mean, standard deviation, and the amount of participants that received these forms of the vignettes. From analyzing our results and looking at all the data, we found that our first hypothesis was not supported. As a reminder, the first hypothesis was adaptability is perceived to be more present in women in the work field than men. And then our second and third hypothesis were supported by the data. The second one being Asian Americans are perceived to show greater traits of adaptability in the work fields than a Caucasian American. And the third is a male Asian doctor's success is attributed to adaptability will only have a slight correlation to that of a woman Asian doctors. So those two, the last two hypotheses, were supported by the data. If you look over on the right, we have a snapshot of our line graph from SPSS. The blue line is male, the female is green. Down on the left is Asian, the last name Wong, and on the right is white, last name Watson. So the higher it goes, the more their success is attributed to adaptability. So you can see over here a visual representation instead of looking at a table with multiple numbers. This makes it easier to understand which hypotheses are supported and not. However, overall, our Um, we didn't find any significant values for any of our data. So this is what we have. Our strengths for our study, because we used a double-blind study, order effects were avoided. Oh, as well as the in between the participants. This is how order effects were avoided. We were also able to control comparisons, and because we used two different independent variables or 2 by 2 factorial, we were able to use an ANOVA to compare our data. However, some limitations on our study, we believe we could have used a larger sample to receive more accurate results. We also believe our character, Alex, was overly successful in the vignette. We don't have the story on the presentation, but our character, Alex, was always the top of their class, went to the best colleges, and got a very financially supportive job. We believe that our character was too successful no matter the ethnicity and the gender. And we believe if we altered it a little bit, we would see some changes in the results. Furthermore, the vignette, we did notice it was quite lengthy, and that could be a reason that participants' focus on it was not entirely how we wanted it. There were more than a handful of participants who answered, I don't know, multiple times or even once to the questions, which unfortunately we still had to consider as an incorrect answer, and that altered our results definitely. After analyzing all the results and reflecting on our study, we found societal implications on it and future study directions that we can use for future studies if we want to replicate this one or use hypotheses similar or just similar study in general. So implications we found is that there are gender biases regarding perceived adaptability. So women or men, as discussed on the last slide with the line graph, there's definitely a perception for gender adaptability who's perceived to have more or a stronger trait of adaptability. Also, societal pressures associated with ethnic stereotypes. For example, we listed the model minority stereotype. To get into detail, this one essentially is attributed to Asian Americans, model minority. Essentially, it's describing the stereotype how many people believe that Asian Americans are very intelligent and very successful. It's a subconscious and not meant to be harmful stereotype. It's just essentially a belief that people have, and that also can be explained as a bias. However, it can be incredibly harmful. Many Asian American individuals has explained that it sets these high expectations on them and has even affected their mental health poorly. Future study directions that we'll definitely consider. We want to include more cultural representation. We would like to keep more representation, have other options, and maybe we can use different last names as well for the same ethnicities or different to have a more significant effect. We can also plan to use study real world education and workplace interactions in our vignette stories. And also, more importantly, implement the implicit association test, other words known as IAT. This one we heavily considering because this test was created to specifically measure the unconscious bias and stereotypes that a person has. Many participants who have taken this test were surprised or shocked by their own results because of how efficient this test is and how quickly it measures a person's first unconscious thoughts when they see an item or are answering a question.
This study has taught us a lot of valuable skills. One being that we learned the importance of avoiding harmful implicit biases and discrimination, which is crucial for creating a fair and inclusive environment. We also developed our scientific writing skills using APA format and improved our data analysis abilities, all while practicing teamwork throughout this project. For areas of improvement, we realized that having a larger sample size could lead to a more accurate and valid depiction of the results. Additionally, refining the survey design, such as adjusting the vignette length, can help with the recollection from the participants. And making the character less successful could also help ensure the participants respond with more accurate perceptions of success in future studies.
These are our references that we use for this presentation. Thank you so much for your time and for listening.
Thank you.